And there's an American guy called Mitch Anthony who we quite enjoy, and he says, you know, life happens and then the money follows. And we believe that's why we choose lifestyle financial planning as our overall philosophy when we're advising our clients. Yeah, so normally a life event happens for people, like they get retrenched or they retire or somebody dies around them, they inherit money, something like that, or they sell a business or whatever, and they get a lump sum of money, and then they approach a financial planner. And typically what a financial planner would do is the person walks in, they've got this lump sum of money, and the financial planner will try and understand the risks that the person is prepared to take, and then they will go and implement and invest the money. And then a year later they come back and they see, well, how well has the money actually done? And we found over the years that it's not satisfactory. It doesn't actually work well enough, I suppose is probably the best way of putting it. And what we have got to understand is that understanding the person's lifestyle, because every person that sits in the chair is completely different. Everybody has got completely different lifestyles, and what we do is we try and take people, we stop them in that moment where they have the money, and we say, okay, let's go walk up the top of a mountain here, and let's look down on your life, and let's look at where you are now, but more importantly, let's have a look at where you want to be in the future. What we found is, first of all, 95% of people couldn't even tell us how much they spend on a monthly basis, as a simple thing from a lifestyle point of view. They have no understanding of that. Most of us don't. The second, and then we start prompting them on issues like, well, what houses do you want to live in? Where do you want to send your kids to school? What cars do you want to drive? How often do you want to change them? And what holidays do you want to go on? And how often do you want to go on those holidays? So we get people to start thinking more long term, and what happens is that they end up starting to put a plan or a life journey together for themselves as a family. And that becomes very powerful, because they're talking about their lives, but actually as a financial planner sitting here, it actually all has financial consequences in doing that. And the interesting thing when we reflect on it in the long term is that some of these financial planning life decisions have got way more impact than the investments that we would have done for them. And getting people to understand the dynamics, the interdynamics of some of those issues as life goes along. I suppose maybe I should give a personal example for myself and my wife, and it was probably around 10 years ago now, and our kids were coming up to, our son was coming up to choosing what school he had to go into. Our cars were kind of getting fairly old and a bit, they were starting to cost us money on repairs and whatever. So we were kind of shifting as regards thinking of getting other cars. And we also came across a property that was offered to us, which we absolutely loved. But when we sat down, myself and my wife sat down, we had to have this conversation about, okay, well, let's kind of look at these three issues separately, but then we also must look at them together. And like most people, we had to make choices, and we had to have trade-offs in that. And we couldn't afford to do all three of these things. And each of these lifestyle choices that we have got very complex issues that we had to deal with ourselves, and to prioritize them and put values in on them as well. And then it came back to making the financial decisions, but we had to make them together, and it was a very healthy exercise for myself and my wife and for us as a family going forward. In general, there are three big decisions, and these three decisions come along at different times normally, and they can have a massive effect on your overall financial situation when you get to retirement. So the first is, what houses are you going to live in? What home are you going to choose? And how much you're going to spend on that. The second is what cars are you going to drive, and how often do you change those cars? And the third thing is education. You know, are you going to go private? Are you going to go into government schools? And then universities. And now it's come into play where there are foreign universities potentially, and families have to sit down together and actually decide on how they're going to prioritize these. But as a financial planner, we can tell you that most people can't choose all of those. They can't choose their first choice for all of them. They might have to make trade-offs, as we had to as a family.